Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon to those who are joining us from Singapore, Japan, and Asia, and good morning or good evening to all of you joining us from other parts of the world. Thank you for being here with us for today's online event on Towards a Sustainable Future, Collaborations and Investments in Deep Tech, presented by SG Innovate and the Japan Science and Technology Agency, or JST. This event is also held in conjunction with Science Agora 2021, an open forum hosted by JST with the purpose of deepening the relationship between science and society. My name is Jin from SG Innovate, and we are a government-owned organization that invests in and helps build deep tech startups, talent, and community. We have been building up and driving deep tech innovations in AI, healthcare, quantum tech, agri-food, autonomous technologies, just to name a few. At SG Innovate, much of our work is to connect Singapore with the global deep tech ecosystem to explore the impact of science and technology in making our future economy and society better. Today, we have our panel of experts to discuss the importance of partnerships and investments in deep tech in creating a more sustainable future. We encourage you to engage with our speakers during the session by submitting your questions in the Q&A box located on the lower panel of your screen. This session is also being translated to Japanese, and you may change your audio settings via the interpretation button located also on the lower panel of your screen. Before we start the session, I would like to invite Emmy from JST to give us a quick introduction about their work. Emmy, please.
Thank you, Jane. And thank you, moderator, panelists, Susanna, Paula, Victor, Kiran, and Hiroka-san, and viewers for your participation and contribution in today's seminar. I'm Emmy Kaneko, Director of Singapore Office of Japan Science and Technology Agency, or JST in short. JST is a funding agency which supports research activities and social application of research outcomes in Japan. We are also the organizer of Science Agora. This is the second edition of webinar which JST and SG Innovate are organizing in conjunction with Science Agora. Agora is a Greek word which means a marketplace. So we hope that Science Agora to be a platform for everyone to showcase and discuss their activities, whatever related to science, technology, and innovation, including deep tech. Personally, I'm really excited to hear from the moderator and panelists this afternoon, especially from the viewpoints of public-private sector partnerships and investment, because these are very new topics to be discussed at Science Agora. So without further ado, let me pass it on to today's moderator, Ms. Susanna Hershey-Norrell. Susanna, please.
Thank you very much, ladies. And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to this exciting session today, where we have gathered experts from a variety of sectors and industries to share their insights with us. Just like delegates are convening in Glasgow, Scotland these days, so have we come together to fight for a better world. I think our joint objective really is to create long-lasting, scalable, and transformative solutions with a positive impact on the world. And boy, do we have some big challenges. Despite so many net zero pledges, greenhouse gas emissions keep rising from year to year, with the exception of the small dip last year. And people's health, it's not just COVID, it's aging population, air pollution. These are very, very big challenges that we must resolve. And it's also our consumption habits that are not really in sync with the planetary boundaries that this Earth has. So there's a lot to talk about. My name is Susanna Hasenöl, and some of you might know me as the sustainability speaker. I have a long career in the tech and life sciences industries, but now I've fully dedicated myself to just sustainability and advancing the climate cause in particular. Without further ado, let's get to know our panelists today. I will hand them over one by one, briefly, to introduce themselves. And after that, please expect me to grill them with some tough questions. Firstly, I would like to welcome to the panel Paula, who is a regional leader at Roche Asia Pacific. Paula, would you please like to introduce yourself, share with us who you are and what you do at Roche?
Thank you, Susana. Hello, everyone. I'm Paula Amunategui. I am a regional leader for digital health innovation at Roche Diagnostics Asia Pacific. Part of this role encompasses making partnerships with startups, with other digital health players, investors, and other cross-industry partners. Our definition of APAC in this sense is 16 key markets that go all the way from China, Japan, Southeast Asia, South Asia, as well as the Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, and all the Pacific Islands. So it's a very broad definition of very diverse markets. And I'm looking forward to this panel today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paula. And where are you joining us today?
Today, I am actually in Switzerland. As a brief reprieve from the pandemic, I have come home for a few weeks. But I'm based in Singapore.
Great to have you with us. Kieran, I believe you are also outside of Singapore presently, is that correct?
Yeah, I live in Japan.
Perhaps?
Yeah, I live in Japan, and that's where I've been for the last 7 years. So yeah, let me give a quick introduction myself. Hello, everyone. Minasan konnichiwa. So my name is Kieran Mysore. I am a principal and head of AI investments at UTech Japan. UTech is University of Tokyo Edge Capital. We are an independent $900 million VC fund linked with University of Tokyo in Japan, investing in global science and technology companies. We have till now invested in about 120 companies. About 2/3 of our investment are in Japan, which is our home market, 1/3 global, that includes US, Singapore, India, Europe, so on and so forth. At UTech, I lead our global AI investments and I have a portfolio of 10 companies. Most of them are outside Japan. Before UTech, for the last 4 years, I've been at UTech. Before that, I used to do open innovation at Deloitte Tohmatsu Japan, leading the APAC and Israel region. Before that, I used to be a machine learning researcher at University of Tokyo. So I'm an AI researcher turned VC. Originally, I'm from the southern part of India, as my surname indicates, Mysore, but I've been in Japan for the last 7 years. Nice to meet you all. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much, Kieran. And next we have Tetsuya, but I believe he's not in Japan currently, right? You made it to Singapore, is that right, Tetsuya?
Sorry, I'm in Hong Kong.
Oh, you're in Hong Kong. Well, you were more international than I thought. Welcome. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Susanna. I'm working for NYK Group and currently working for Yusen Logistics, global headquarters in Hong Kong. It is a great pleasure to be a part of this panel, and I've been working for logistics industry for more than 20 years. And I am joining this panel from a standpoint of a corporate logistics industry, or industry. And Yusen Logistics is one of the core business companies of NYK Group, and NYK Line is one of the eldest shipping companies in Japan for more than 135 years history. And we have more than 500 group companies globally relating to maritime and logistics business. And Yusen Logistics mainly doing global logistics, freight forwarding, warehousing, land transport, logistics consulting, and etc. I am in charge of research and digital innovation trends in logistics industry to improve our operation and create new value to our customers. So before I moved to Hong Kong in 2019, I was working for another company named Symphony Creative Solutions, established in Singapore, Block 71. And I learned a lot about the collaboration in a startup ecosystem in Block 71, and looking forward to be a part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tetsuya. And I know you've been working on some very exciting AI projects as well. So we'll come back to that in a moment. Thank you very much. and Victor. So I think finally someone from Singapore as well. Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Good afternoon to everyone. My name is Victor, and I am a Director of Venture Investments here at SG Innovate. So I head up a team that invests specifically into the topic of deep tech. I've been doing this since the beginning of the organization, about 4 years ago. And before that, I have been with the same organization for about almost 9 years. So a lot of the work that we've been doing today, is a combination of all the different ideas and thoughts, that we've gone into trying to commercialize this area of deep tech in Singapore. And it's been an interesting and challenging journey, and we hope to do more.
Thank you very much. Yeah. I'd actually like to continue with you, Victor. Having also been collaborating with SG Innovate for some years myself now, I find it a very interesting model and quite a unique construct also in a way. Kind of public-private partnership, government, VCs, startups. How would you describe that cooperation model in your words, Victor?
So I think you've summarized it in a very precise way, right? We are a private company owned by the Singapore government. So the government is our only shareholder. We were created because we believe that a new type of venture model was required to invest in this space of deep tech, especially early stage deep tech, because these companies are not don't move at the same pace, nor do they make money at the same pace, as typical consumer or enterprise types of companies. And I think we introduce ourselves as patient capital to come in to help to grow the companies along and to work alongside them, to try and help them to achieve some of their regional and global ambitions. Right. So I think model-wise, it's an experiment, right? It's an experiment to see how we can better help scientists, founders, who want to create an idea that is global in nature, and to have capital that's willing to sit by them, and help to tide through the difficult times, especially in the early stages.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And is that where you see kind of the most need for this kind of support for radical innovation, early stage?
I think in the space of deep tech, or tough tech or hard tech, depending on how you define it, anything that involves the commercialization of core IP is going to take some time, right? And generally, I would say scientists are not, business people.
Right,
and they may not understand the process of commercialization, nor understand the process of working with a corporate. Right, people in a corporate are used to working with large companies, right? Startups are used to working with small companies, So there is a certain mismatch when you bring the two together that I think all of us here are trying to address, which is how do I get a startup to understand how a corporate is moving, and how do I help a corporate to understand, why a startup moves in a particular way, which doesn't really make sense to them. Why are you guys, moving so fast? Take time. Hang on. I need some.
I understand, and I see Paula nodding her head there as well. Is it true that you have your, experiences in this context as well? You are on mute, Paula. Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, certainly over the past few years, through our different accelerator initiatives, we've started as well the road to partnership with startups. Until recently, our partnership model was very traditional. We would take also companies from a very late stage directly into either an acquisition or a licensing agreement or something already quite established. But part of the evolution is working on new partnership models with companies like startups, where you really have to look, okay, where they are, where we are, and create some flexibilities on both sides so that we can really go on part of the journey together.
Would you be able to share us
evidence or creating some early wins in the commercial space? Yes, we have to do very tailored partnership models.
Okay, so is it more a question for you looking at, perhaps what are your needs and what's out on the market in terms of startup readiness, and then you tailor-made your approach on a case-by-case basis, or have you actually developed some kind of more nuanced startup programs to address this, I would say, varied picture out there?
So we have a very established startup program called Creosphere that it's been running since 2017 in Munich. We expanded it to Singapore and the rest of APAC only last year in the middle of the pandemic. I mean, and the idea is obviously not to just accelerate, incubate, and take help to go along in the journey with some selected startups, because what we're facing now is also the volume of innovation that's coming to us. It's unlike the usual partnership models we would seek with more established companies. I mean, now it's really, you want to keep some broad approaches as well, but take a few then with you further into our journey together. And I see a lot of that readiness, getting that readiness together will be specific, of course, to areas of our clinical expertise as well. So, you know, specific disease areas where we have the connections to the clinicians, to the regulators, to the access, market access decision makers.
Yeah, and if we focus for a moment on kind of the very big sustainability challenges, especially here in Asia, is there something where you say, you know, Roche is really focused on certain things, and also perhaps with this kind of innovation model, partnership model?
Yes, I mean, one of the things we're doing beyond our individual engagements with specific companies is we have to partner with other large companies, so our industry partners, as well as governments and regulators, because the promise of digital health, I mean, this is really where we're going to change the way we deliver health. The traditional model, you can imagine, we do research in a clinical lab, I mean, a very controlled clinical trial environment, takes years at high cost, you create your medicine, and then you hope for the best. You know, we have ways to report outcomes back, but the true promise of a personalized, affordable digital health comes when we could really capitalize on that data that comes after the drugs or the diagnostics are released into the market. But the requirement for that is infrastructure.
Right.
So
and could you tell us a little bit more about what that looks like here in Asia in particular? What's there? What's missing? What are you working on especially?
Yeah, especially it's digital health regulations. I mean, there are 4 key areas where we are working on, specifically EU, ASEAN Commission, with individual governments. I have to say one challenge is when you work with the European Union, you're dealing with one body. In Asia, you have to, and even within countries, you have to do so many multi-stakeholder engagements. But specifically, I mean, one very key example is digital health regulation, creating a very fit for purpose framework that recognizes both the balance, the need to bring innovation faster to market, as well as the safety and the best interest of our patients, so that we don't play fast and loose as well with health, because unlike other technologies where you can maybe fail, health is not somewhere where you want to fail. So for this, we have worked very closely with APAC Med, for example. So this is a cross-industry association in APAC, where we really go together with our own competitors. You know, I mean, we realize this is something we cannot try to tackle by ourselves and have our own interests. I mean, we need common standards for everyone. And we partner as well with the startups in this.
And if we assume that that is in place one day, so in addition to speed, and I presume like access, improved access, are these the 2 key benefits in terms of sustainability and resilience of the health system that digital health brings? Or is it something else?
Well, obviously improved access, better outcomes, more personalized and tailored, because our traditional healthcare approach is still, you know, based on a very statistical modeling, but the amount of data that we have the ability to collect today on people's, not only biologies, but behaviors and other things that are complete drivers of their outcomes, to our ability to make sense of that data and turn it into concrete healthcare outcomes, where we could really make things so much more efficient for the healthcare system. This is really ultimately where we're trying to go.
Right. And when you think about all these, you know, advances and possibilities, do you see that kind of things benefiting the healthcare system across the board, or are there some specific diseases that you see would profit from this kind of capabilities most in the context of Asia?
Well, I have to say one of I mean, we are traditionally very much an oncology company, as you know, and, you know, cancer treatments and the benefits of a very improved outcomes in cancer. Before, in the old days, you would get diagnosed with cancer that was equivalent to a death sentence. You know, advances in medicine allow you to live a good life, but a lot of the times after you're discharged, you're on your own. So what you do as an individual, how you manage yourself, how you comply to your treatment protocols, to your monitoring, to keep yourself in your behaviors, to stay in those good outcomes, you know, it's very much things that happen outside of the clinical space. And so this is a very important where we see, you know, again, the deep tech capabilities and other data sources outside as a real world data. The challenges we see today, in particularly in APAC, you know, when you compare maybe to United States, is that we have many different standards or lack of standards whatsoever in the way we capture the data, the way we process that data, the way we share that data. Emerging international collaborations between markets to have these common standards. Right. Interoperability, how this data can travel from one place to the other so that we can make sense of it. So this is the fight that we're really going head on. In a future, imagine when you think about all that non-healthcare data. Let's go back to your sustainability. The outcomes of two people with the exact same biology, exact same condition will be completely different if I live in a capital that is full of pollution, dirty water, you know, versus I'm here in Switzerland, you know, with the waters clear.
Yes, yes, yeah.
You know, and the epigenetic factors that will come out of this, you know, we are still in the very, very nascent stages of being able to unlock even what that would mean. That
still
will be
a lot of work to, yeah, still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, we can't get our clinical data in the real world.
Yes,
then we cannot even aspire to look at the effects of the environment as well.
Yes, yeah. Well, thank you very much for sharing that, Paula. I'm wondering whether Kieran, you might have perhaps something, you know, some company that you have invested in that you are perhaps looking into investing in that you know, might help with the digital health challenge that we have.
Yeah, digital health is, of course, an important area. So we invest in all sectors of science and technology. 1/3 is healthcare, life science. 1/3 is frontier tech, which is AI, robotics, quantum computing, advanced computing, so on, fintech as well. And 1/3 is manufacturing and physical sciences. So I think, as Victor was saying, the S-curve or some of the time to commercialization sometimes for deep tech companies kind of like take a long time, but things don't work until they do, which means like, then once you know, you see that sort of exponential growth, right? Moderna, for example, is a great example because for most deep tech companies, the problems are very strongly defined. So the market is out there. So what you do is sort of like the technology sort of help. And one of the points before coming to the digital health, I think one of the points that Victor was mentioning, which is right, that several of the science and technology entrepreneurs or academicians who want to become entrepreneurs require a lot of help. So that is where we focus a lot of our activities on. Of course, after investing, we help our companies to recruit business-related executives. We help our companies to collaborate with large corporations, either in their home markets or potentially expand to Japan as well, either as POCs. And in general, startups are good in innovation. Large corporations are super good in distribution. We help them sort of like in those angles as well. And of course, apart from that, we bring in corporate partners for follow-on investment to de-risk the capital as well. In digital health, for example, I have one portfolio company called Tricog, which is based out of Singapore and India, which does AI-driven analysis of cardiac diseases, ECG and cardiac ultrasound, Holter, and so on and so forth. So they have, when we invested, they were in about 200,000 patients in about 50 hospitals, but now they are they've touched the lives of about 6 million patients in 12 countries in over 2,000 hospitals. For example, AstraZeneca globally is a large partner for it, hopefully maybe in the soon, Roche and others as well. So what they are doing, so that's a beautiful story because the region, Southeast Asia / India, is in generally really good in technology, in AI related software sort of innovation. Japan, as you know, historically is really good in medical device. So most of the hardware partners, Tricog is a pure healthcare AI company. the hardware partners of Tricog actually come from Japan, the Fukuda Denshis, Nihon Koden, so on and so forth. So all these large corporations are looking to move into a recurring revenue business model, right? Not just one-time device fee. So that's one of the reasons where they partner and improve the access. So that's one example. Second example, which I can give, is a company called SWAT, which is a Singaporean company, a spin-off of NUS, which does on-demand route optimization, dynamic route optimization. So this is related to logistics, for example. So while logistics mobility is a problem in Southeast Asia, similar technology, but applied to aging population problem in Japan, right? So how do you do on-demand bus so that people can be moved from one place to another in remote areas of Japan? So that's an important use case for them. So half of SWAT's clients are actually Japanese clients, like the train companies, the smart city initiatives of the government, the logistics companies as well. So I think, and one thing I'd like to give credit to Singapore here, SWAT was able to flourish because of the regulatory sandbox created by the Singapore government, which allowed the startup's product to become robust enough before expanding globally. I think two things that Singapore has, which is like super attractive for us, is one is obviously that sort of regulatory landscape, predictable rules, stable currency, stable rule of law, and so on and so forth, but also diversity of population, not just in terms of ethnic diversity for sure, but also intellectual diversity. So I think that makes the region super interesting for us when we are investing. Happy to touch upon any of those points if required.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kieran. In a moment, I would like to continue with the mobility topics and logistic aspects, because I think that is something that Tetsuya will tell you a lot. But before we go into that, I was just wondering about the impact that these companies that you've invested in have been able to achieve. So would you be able to articulate whether it's in terms of the Sustainable Development Goals or some other sustainability metrics, what has been so far the impact of both of these companies, if possible?
Yeah, I think initially, like the investment sector, private investments as well as public investments, right? Like, so initially it used to focus on profits. Then it started to focus on double bottom line, which is profits and people. And now it focuses on triple bottom line, which is profits, people, and planet, right? So I think that sort of has come really strongly. Tricog, for example, as I said, has saved the lives of more than 6 million patients in 12 countries. That's one example, which is straight. I have another company which is developing a new class of antibiotics targeted at drug-resistant infection. Antimicrobial resistance is actually a huge problem. 50% of, or maybe 30 to 40% of ICU deaths are actually not because of something else, but because of these bacterial infections, for example. So that's a company which can potentially solve the problem of, I would say, bottom 5 billion, 6 billion people in the world. So that's sort of another example. SWAT, the company that I gave, is solving the problem of how do you move things efficiently in Southeast Asia and how do you move people efficiently in Japan, right? So that's so in one case in Southeast Asia, it's actually expanding the economy. We heard that by using SWAT, some of the players in Philippines, for example, have been able to cut down the commute time of their employees a lot. But at the same time, it has also it adds value to the carbon neutral economy because it's actually ensuring that less fuels are used in order to do the same thing, right? Similarly, it's solving an aging population problem in Japan. The last example I'd like to give is another Singaporean company. It's a Singapore-US company called Opal AI, which does AI systematic hedging and trading of commodities asset class. Traditionally, you think fintech company, commodities asset class, maybe it's a zero-sum game. What is the point? But it's actually not. As you can understand, commodities actually originate in most of the developing countries like Africa, Latin America, and so on, but has like a lot of like chocolate, for example, Switzerland is maybe the largest producer, but all originates in Ghana and sort of thing. So how do you bring about markets? For example, there is lack of price transparency. So how do you bring about price transparency in that market so that the power is, or the benefits of it don't just accrue to the large corporations, but it also accrues to the cooperative banks. For example, Opal AI works with cooperative banks in US, in Africa, in Latin America, where so that the farmers can have more transparency. They can actually hedge against volatility. For example, recently the corn price shot up, but the farmers were able to hedge against it so that their positions are protected, their bottom lines are protected. I think these are some of the companies that we look for. One of the things we really like is in case of deep tech companies, you don't have to balance between, okay, impact or like money. The more money, the more lives you save, the more impact you add, the more money you make. it's actually just one point before we move on. It comes to one of my favorite entrepreneurs of all time, Shibusawa Eiichi, who is the father of Japan modern capitalism. His belief was that in the long run, in order to create long-term wealth, business and morality should go hand in hand. So that's like stakeholder capitalism. It's called Rongoto Saraban in Japanese, which means the principles of Analects and Abacus, the Confucius philosophy with the business logic of Abacus. I think that sort of principle, that stakeholder capitalism and cautious capitalism is emerging. And I think a lot of people have started to look at Japan as one of the models to pioneer such. And that's one of the reasons why we are super bullish about deep tech startups in general.
Oh, great to hear that. I mean, just as a side comment, farmers really do profit from better price information. But if I may add a few requests into your product roadmap, to include, the water and the resource consumption as well. Those should also flow into the purchasing decisions, right? We should not base our purchasing decisions based on price only, right? Also the environmental factors and social factors should be factored in.
Yeah, the sustainable supply chain sort of, right?
Yeah. Before we move over to the mobility topic, I would still like to ask you, though, one more question regarding the cardiac solution that you have.
Sure.
And you said that the company you've invested has saved 6 million lives. Now, we know people with cardiac conditions have a higher risk of becoming hospitalized and so on when air pollution is high. Same goes for COVID patients, right? And we know that air quality monitoring is also very important from that perspective. So is that something that your AI algorithms consider the environmental factors as part of whatever use cases you have?
So different things, right? So for example, in general, I think till now, health has been sort of like health analytics has been the focus, but slowly things are moving into predictive health, right? So I think the best way to sort of like think is the one mission of that company, Tricog in specific, is your heart attack may come in the next 2 days. That's the ultimate sort of like version of it, right? And multiple sort of things like are one is like your short-term sort of like what are your health risks, but there are also long-term. So that's where maybe Paula will have a good views on this longitudinal data. So how do you look at not just the ECG data, but also cardiac ultrasound data combined with that? And the one thing is, AI is not automating doctors out of anything. It's actually empowering doctors to do more of it. AI is super good in certain things. Doctors are really good in bringing those things together. That's one. Regarding the air pollution itself, there are other ways to tackle it. For example, transitioning into sustainable transport is a big area for us as well. So one of my recent investments, we haven't closed the deal yet, is actually improving the yield of battery electric vehicle battery manufacturing itself, so that it can actually help transition the world to, like a lot of countries have, I think 2030, 2040 to move their transportation into electric vehicles. So it is empowering that sort of future as well. So those are some of the companies that we invest as well like tackling the same problem from multiple perspectives.
Thank you. Great to hear that. But now I'd like to, discuss a little bit more about logistics and efficiency for logistics operations, shipping in particular. Now I happen to know that Yusen Logistics has engaged with some startups and also the Singapore Port Authority or Maritime Authority, I'm not quite sure, and done some very exciting things to improve the efficiency of shipping. Tetsuya, would you like to share a little bit more about that with us?
Okay. So firstly, my standpoint is user of the solution. So in this case, we are likely to procure the proven solution from the market, generally speaking. And there's a discussion, you can imagine, the risk about working with companies without past result. So in this manner, proof of concept trial is very important to work with startups. But budgeting POC for early stage solution is not easy, as you can imagine, internal company. So the supporting scheme or program by public sector or third-party platform helps this situation. And There is how can I say, a program provided by Singapore MPA named SmartPort Challenge. This is a kind of open innovation program. And in this program, we provide real pain points in our actual business. And we provide as a challenge statement. And this is also important part by private sector to provide a real challenge, not theoretical one. And organizer side, mentor the startups to provide more practical, brush up the proposal to the challenge. So once we find interesting proposal, we can do POC with Maritime Port Authority's support. This is a very good program. And actually we used this scheme and did POC with a startup successfully. And after the completion, we choose to use their solution by our own budget. So like this way, private and public sector's collaboration makes more opportunities for POC and opportunity for the potential business.
Right, right. And what was the outcome of that POC? So you tried something new, and how did it work out at the end?
The detail, it's quite difficult to disclose, but utilizing the AI technology to predict the schedule of the shipment.
Okay.
Yes, and under this situation, this is more and more important, I can say, technology to predict the shipping schedule.
Yes. Okay, so a good reference case for that program. In the meanwhile, we have received some questions from the audience, and I'm going to raise those here. And so if you have any more, please keep them coming. We'll keep an eye on you. But so I have a question to Paula, please. And you said that there are many startups in APAC with high readiness. So how do you then actually select which startups to work with, and what are your top priorities when making such decisions?
Okay, thank you. I would say there are varying levels of readiness, more than they're all having high readiness, because the readiness in the healthcare space means a lot of, regulatory readiness, commercial readiness, clinical readiness. Have I gotten enough kind of clinical knowledge and proof points? So we may be able to partner at different stages, and we have experience of partnering really at different stages and say, okay, let's do some more clinical readiness together, or let's do some more regulatory readiness together as well. So this is where we define readiness in order to get ultimately to commercial readiness as well, which means bringing it to our patients. Areas of interest, I had mentioned oncology, but yeah, and now that of course I heard Kieran. Of course, cardiometabolic is a very, very strong area of focus for us. So we are going to be, Kieran, I will want to hear more about your company. We are definitely very open, and I invite all investors and partners who are in this space to approach us proactively as well. So we do have a very open way of having at least some initial discussions with companies in this space, because we feel that this is one of those diseases that have a high chance of better outcomes by benefiting from digital health technology. So we are really working in a much more ecosystem approach, where we are also happy to provide even technical integration capabilities into existing infrastructures as well. And hopefully as well, let's see how we can integrate all of our data sets to create better outcomes. And better knowledge and more refined deep technology. I mean, that's the hope today, right? Today we can only partner in this space to provide maybe more short-term benefits in terms of better workflows, better access to our patients, remote monitoring technologies, how we improve, patient care through very short-term activities that do have a high impact. But when we want to go back to deep tech, the key question also, and the key capability we all need to build together with governments as well and other partners, is the very clean data capture aggregation capabilities, so that other also players who have a very good knowledge. So that's another area to take me back to, you know, creating good data analytics out of all this real world data that we're capturing to generate new clinical insights. So this is the strength of all the companies that we are. We have good clinical expertise. You have people with excellent, you know, medical device and data capturing expertises. You have other companies who have excellent, you know, algorithm building capabilities. And so that's how we see this moving forward.
Thank you, Paula. I would actually like to stay on the topic of data, or data, however you want to pronounce it. I think some people in the Q&A have mentioned that you know, data sharing in particular can be particularly tricky, and also that there can be a lot of other kind of red tape type of obstacles between a collaboration between a startup and a big corporate. I don't know if any of you would like to share views on that, on how you've perhaps been able to overcome such challenges, and are they really that common to start with?
Maybe,
Kira,
yeah, I can take,
yeah.
Yeah, because of my AI background, I can take a stab at it. I think you make a really good point. I think data privacy in general, especially in healthcare, is super important, but even in manufacturing and other things, both as a measure of defensibility as well as from a privacy angle, is super important. I think some of the interesting techniques we've seen is, how do you do machine learning on data without actually exposing the data itself? There are techniques like homomorphic encryption and others that are coming up, which are super useful. One of the other things, especially we've been seeing in healthcare, is emergence of synthetic data. I'm looking for such startups, actually. If there are any startups working on synthetic data, I would love to hear from them.
Before we go into detail,
yeah.
What is synthetic data in a nutshell? What is that?
Yeah. So synthetic data is anywhere you can sort of anonymize the data and create virtual patient models. Like, for example, one of the ideas that I tried to do, start my own company, but it didn't work out, is in clinical trial, you have like two arms, right? There's the treatment arm, there's the placebo arm. Can you actually build virtual patient models so that you can eliminate the placebo arm, especially for rare diseases where finding patients is so difficult, right? Like to do the clinical trials, can we cut down the cost of that? So those are some of the things that are slowly coming up, I think. So I think that those, some of the sort of that data anonymization techniques, as well as homomorphic encryption, the other ones that I mentioned. So those are from a technological standpoint. Policy wise, I think sort of it's like improving as well. And most of our companies, especially which provide software solutions to not just healthcare, but even manufacturing, they offer, it used to be initially only cloud services, but now they also offer on-premise, of course, because they understand sometimes that it may be all decentralized compute, right? In which case, like nobody like owns the data, or in case everybody owns the data. So there are like three sorts of models. So one is like on-premise, one is cloud, the other one is decentralized compute. So I think those are some interesting things coming up from a technology perspective. Regulation always takes time. So I think technology goes faster, market sort of follows, regulation takes time. So I think that's just the way it goes.
We've also received a question from Tanya about the differences in the region in terms of the government's encouragement and willingness to help innovative relationship between big and small companies. Do you see any countries where that's particularly flourishing? Singapore maybe?
Yeah, maybe Victor can answer, because maybe he may have a view on this.
I think that's a constant challenge, right? In terms of how we bridge small companies and big companies, as I shared earlier. What we've tried to do, so within SG Innovate, we've created a team that works primarily with corporates to help to understand what is it actually the corporate needs, right? Rather than just going out and bringing every single startup to the table. We want to work with the corporates to understand kind of like what are they looking at, right? And what are some of the key issues that they face while trying to solve some of the key problems. And then amongst the community, we want to work with and look for companies that actually would fit into solving those problems, right? Along the way, we do need to educate, as I said, both sides in terms of how this this partnership should work. Timelines need to be fixed because all startups work on 18-month timelines, right? So and 18 months is just a bit more than a POC sometimes. So you got 12-month POC and the company has 6 months, and if things don't work out, then they die, right? So I think that's a practical part of actually a startup life, in that if your POCs do not convert, what happens? What is your backup plan? Should you work with three corporates at the same time? Because you, if one, you have resources to work with 3. So these are difficult questions, which in this part of the world, because of the smaller check sizes in general, the companies don't really have much room to maneuver around, right? So if I've only received this much money for 18 months, I have a huge corporate wanting to work with me. Should I focus all my efforts on one corporate? What if it doesn't work out? When do I pull the plug? What is plan B? So I think these are questions that there are no easy answers, and every situation we've seen has been quite different. We have seen companies that died because of that. We've seen companies that flourished, right? So I think this is part of the issue that has not been solved. I think there's still more room for improvement from everyone, right? In terms of how we want to manage this. I don't think we have the perfect answer, but I think talking to each other and making sure that we fix measurable timelines, specific, rules of conversion, in terms of what happens when this thing is successful, when do we convert, and getting the startup to understand that, that they need to know this is how the future looks like, depending on what kind of corporate they partner with. I think Singapore and many countries are trying to bridge that, but it's still difficult because it's all about money, right? About commercial and also about it's about the bottom line, unfortunately, especially at the POC level. Right? So we need to figure. We still need to figure it out. It's still a problem currently, a challenge, that we are all looking to solve.
Thank you, Victor, for that.
I did want to highlight there's a recent program as well. I mean, there's many different programs running by the Singapore government. I mean, I really have to give a lot of kudos. And one very recently launched one by the EDB to, again, foster corporate innovation and partnerships between startups. And again, providing some additional, tools. So you have your regulatory sandbox, you have innovation promotion bodies. I think we have to see a little bit on the public healthcare IT, after the big hack, a little bit of coming back, but I think they're slowly coming back into opening up for innovation. But these kind of programs, there are many avenues actually to execute here, and it provides a great test bed for startups from all over the region.
Well, thank you, Paula, for that. And we have lots of questions here. I will try to address as many as possible in the next 10 minutes, but I think it would be really helpful if you wanted to vote your favorite questions, so we could see where's the most interest, and we'll try to select on that basis as well. But there's one new topic that has popped up, which is more the hardware side of things, AI and climate. Now I lost that question, but someone was asking, should like hardware research, AI research be prioritized over other kinds of innovation to actually provide a solution to climate change in particular? Is there someone who would like to tackle this question? Machine learning, AI, IoT, hardware.
Sorry, the question was, should it be prioritized or anything like that?
Yeah, now I find it. Given that the current definition of deep tech is mainly in the domain of machine learning, AI, IoT, would it be agreeable that we have to prioritize hardware solutions as they can immediately address the climate change? So over these other areas.
That's a good question. I don't think that definition of deep tech is just AI at all. Anything for us, deep science and technology is anything where science and technology or anything that has proprietary IP behind it that takes a long time and that is not easily replicable or that is easily defensible. So often there are two types of innovations. One is science-based innovations, which are fundamental discoveries. For example, drug discovery companies that have innovation in structural biology, or I don't know, aerospace companies that have innovation in some form of like rotor interaction. So those are examples of fundamental science discoveries, right? And second are engineering innovations where there is no one single thing, it's a syndication of multiple things. Like the company Tricog that I was talking about on the AI cardiac side, they combine interventional cardiology with embedded systems with machine learning. So that's a combination of disparate things, right? So all these things, and there's very much a hardware component there. So the definition of deep tech is not necessarily AI. AI is more of a sort of a platform, I think. And the advantage for deep tech companies is you don't have to prioritize the technology, you prioritize the problems, right? So you go after the problems, and whatever technology that solves the problem is okay. If that technology, if the problem can be solved without using AI by a simple statistical model, that's great. That's what ends up being in most of the healthcare problems, actually. So that's fine as well. So I think the problem-based definition is maybe much more important, at least from a startup perspective for us.
And also, when you talk about deep tech relies on data, and data needs to be captured somehow. And a lot of the data, when we're talking either about environment or our biologies, you know, we're still talking about a physical world. So yeah, hardware is an embedded definition of an enabler for deep tech. You won't get there without it. But it's about looking at the problem and then which are the enablers.
Next, I would like to address that top most voted question. And this also happens to be my favorite question. Investors/VCs usually look at profitability when looking at startups. While there is an increased interest in sustain tech, green tech, etc., how to balance between profit and doing good? For real? Or do you need to balance between both? Is there not a positive correlation? Who would like to address this? Tough question.
I can have a go.
Okay.
Deep tech is a very long-term investment. You know, the materialization of this reality, we're not talking about, this is not a short-term quick bang for your buck. I think it's good to address smart ways in between. So even when we're looking at health, to say, okay, which are some value drivers that can be materialized today? And again, if it's workflow efficiencies in the healthcare system by bringing technologies that can make simple tasks a bit more automated, you know, taking away from say, nurse capacity, that you're already creating some value into it, right? And so how can we create new models that also reward these short-term steps toward the deep tech future? But I also want to have the empathy when we talk about the profits, right? What lies behind investments are people as well. And so sometimes we are talking, some investment funds, we're talking about people's pension funds. We're talking about, you know, private monies that have gone into these investments. It's not some soulless person trying to, you know, make money. So this is why I think it's important as well that we have empathy at all levels, and we look at, you know, creating value, rewarding that value along the chain, but not lose our sight into that long term, because if we lose our sight and we say we drop it because, you know, deep tech, it's going to take maybe another 10 years to materialize sustainably. So there has to be a commitment on both sides to make the most of it, of this journey, because it's a marathon. What's your view, Victor?
Just a quick addition. So I mean, like, investors and VCs are typically one instrument, one funding instrument that we use, you know, to fund the growth of companies, right? And of course, investors and VCs have their own metrics by which they're measured, and also, you know, their own responsibilities to their LPs and their investors. So I think, realistically speaking, you know, I think all startups have to figure out what are the best sources of funding for their venture. It could start with non-dilutive funding. You know, it could start with, you know, projects, you know, paid projects along the way, and then figuring out when is the best time to trigger, you know, like VC money, right? The point is, venture capital does have a specific curve that they look for, right? For deep tech investors, we may look at it over a slightly longer timeline, but still, there is still a curve that is expected, right? Because of the way our funds are created, right? Which is why I earlier on said that I think there is a need, you know, to rethink, right, how we actually create these funds, and also to change the type of time pressure and performance pressures on venture as a body, right? But I think realistically today, you know, you would need to diversify your sources of funding. You need to have a very clear timeline of how you want your business to grow. As an investor myself, I would definitely say there is no good investment that doesn't self-sustain and make money eventually, right? So meaning that you can't be losing money every day and still be a good venture, right? So and unfortunately, you'll still be judged by those lenses today, right? So I think yeah, that's the answer itself is basically just to make sure that you diversify, right? And VC money may not always be the right money to take. You could do better by getting a loan, right? Or working with a foundation, on getting more longer term funding, right? That could potentially be more complementary to what you're trying to develop as a solution.
Yeah, they can have different kind of metrics, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Just one point on that. I think the public markets these days have also been focusing on non-financial reporting, which is really good. I think ESG is one metric, but several sort of like non-financial reporting metrics coming up. And it does, like, at the end of the day, we want to fund enduring companies, right? That's the whole goal of it. So that sort of is like, you can see that most of the time for deep tech companies, it may be harder to raise $50 million especially in this region, in private markets than in public markets. So I think like you've seen like companies like Moderna, Tesla, etc., being supported by public markets for a long time, and now they are reaping rewards. So I think that gives us a lot of comfort as well, that sort of these enduring companies going after long problems will eventually sort of like get to that sort of profitability. But at the same time, I think Paula's point is very correct. You cannot like prioritize one over the other because it never rarely works. So that's the point. Yeah.
Thank you. Tetsuya, would you like to add something to this conversation?
Actually, our stance is a user of the solution from startups, but I can say it is quite helpful if they getting bigger and develop more, I can say, faster speed. Yeah, it is also helpful for corporate side as well.
So speed is king. All right. Well, we'll unfortunately have to wrap up very soon, but I'd like to finish the panel with a final question. And you may wish to answer this from your personal or company perspective. I leave it up to you. But I think there's an agreement that a lot needs to be done to better the world, to save ourselves from catastrophic climate change, from COVID, and many other things. If you have one shot at investing something, putting your family savings, your personal savings into something that's perhaps already there or maybe around the corner, where would you put your money? What technology, what company, what would you invest into if you could only choose one? Tough question, I know. Kira, would you like to start?
Yeah, so I'll take a bit of a philosophical view on this. Sorry. So very quickly, ultimately
30 seconds, okay?
Sure, like less than that maybe. So ultimately, I'm an AI person, right? So eventually to advance human consciousness, so there are certain things that humans are good at, and bringing back more empathy to human life. And there are a lot of things that AI is good at. So at some point, singularity is something that we are super interested in. People may define it in different ways, but advancing human consciousness is what we'd like to invest in.
Just need to keep this very short. Over to you, sure. Paula, and then we wrap it up. If I can have very quick answer.
We have 30 seconds. I'm going to go with something else. No, it wouldn't be technology right now. If this is what we want to achieve, I still think we need to invest in our people and our education so that we make the right decisions and we can empower that technology going forward.
Thank you. Tetsuya, how about you?
I agree that education is the most important part for ESG, and especially for logistics industry, we are connecting chain of supply chain. So every single environmentally friendly operation in logistics contribute directly or indirectly to the sustainable future.
Thank you. And Victor, final words. You're on mute.
Sorry. So I was just saying that I personally believe that climate change is to me one of the most key issues that is facing the world today, especially with the rise of the gases, greenhouse gases within the atmosphere. So I would want to invest in decarbonization. you know, in the most efficient way possible, right? There's so many discussions around, you know, what's the best way to do that, you know, net zero, you know, but I don't believe that we have the right solutions yet. I think more needs to be done in this space, and time is running out. So that's what I will go for.
Thank you very much. I would do the same. All right, great. Thank you very much all for joining today. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all questions, but I think there are many more discussions like this coming up with SG Innovate. So with that, thank you very much for joining, and I hand over to Jin for some final words. Thank you.
Thank you, Susanna, and thank you all for the great sharing, and thank you to everyone in our audience for your ongoing questions. It is always very heartening to see so much enthusiasm at our sessions, but you know, real conversations often happen after, so we do hope that all of you can keep connected. The recording of this session will also be uploaded on SG Innovate's YouTube channel, so do head on there for a review of today's event. And until our next online event again, thank you everyone and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.